Welcome to the L&D Rant podcast, an opportunity to hear from key figures in L&D, airing their grievances and frustrations, but most importantly, also sharing their solutions. Today, I'm happy to be joined by Sarah Ratcliff, Learning Ambassador at Sagos. And on this episode, we talk about the need to consider the learner. They don't always love learning as much as we do. Sarah shares her thoughts on what L&D need to do to get better in this space and how we can do more to engage our learners. So welcome, Sarah, to the L&D Rant. Wonderful to have you on the podcast this week.
And it's wonderful to be here. Thank you, Kathy, for having me.
Well, before we get started, it'd be great just to hear a little bit more about what you're doing currently, if that's all right.
Yeah, so my role at Sagos has changed just recently. So I'm now Learning Ambassador, which sounds great, doesn't it? And I'm really the spokesperson and, for want of a better word, the learning geek expert. So obviously what's happened over my time at Sagos is that I never stopped talking about learning and the importance of the learner and how we need to engage and make the learning and all that we do around that learning absolutely work for the person at the heart of this, which is ultimately the learner. And then obviously organizations and everything else has a ripple effect upon that. So my previous role was head of learning solutions. So I was very much kind of in looking after all the solutions, the products, very much hands-on with design, delivery, facilitators, all the rest of everything that goes with it. But now I suppose I've stepped out of some of the operational side of that, and I get to talk about what I'm really passionate about all day. So yeah, so as Learning Ambassador, I'm the spokesperson for Sagos. I offer solutions and advice on all things that we do. I work with a lot of our sort of high-end clients to make sure that we really do have the right solutions for the right people and that we're doing it the right way, so that, you know, it's cutting through some of the blurb, challenging people on perhaps some of the things that they do or don't do, and together coming up with the right solution for the company, the person, and making it all fit. So yeah, so I'm in a very happy place, and I still delivering, still facilitating. So I just love it. I'm in a really happy place with it all.
Oh, that's great. I can tell in your voice. And I've known you for a little while, and you know, something that always comes across with you is your passion for learning, passion for what you do. And I think having the role of learning ambassador is absolutely ideal for you. That's fantastic.
There it is. I'm very lucky indeed. I think they just got sick of listening to me.
Yeah.
I banged my drum for so long.
Good for you. Good for you. How did you actually get into learning and development in the first place? What was your journey?
Oh, what a great question. Right, okay. So I started my career as a PA. Ultimately, I wanted to work with horses, but my mum said to me, Sarah, you can work with horses and never have your own, or you can go and get some qualifications and then be able to afford your own horse. So I thought, oh, okay, that's a good idea. Very clever, mummy.
Very clever.
So I started off as a PA, and I worked for some great companies across my time. And in some of these, you know, organizations I worked at, I'd go to training sessions and I'd think, oh, that looks great. And I also was a member of Weight Watchers. And at Weight Watchers, back in the day, they used to almost like run a little mini training session. So everyone would get weighed, and then you'd have your training session on nutrition and motivation and, you know, a bit of motivational speaking and that. And I used to sit there and think, oh, that's nice. I could do that. Anyway, I lost some weight and I became a leader for Weight Watchers. And essentially we went away on a 3-day residential where we were taught how to present, how to motivate people, how to do coaching in a very quick way, because you're trying to boost people's motivation very quickly. And I worked with Weight Watchers for quite a few years, had amazing meetings, had brilliant successes. So in my time, I became a diamond leader for them, got the most people to goal in the area. And I loved it. I loved being on my feet and really helping people. And that's the bottom line here, is it's helping people to achieve what they want to achieve. And a job came up in the training department. So we all went for these assessments, which was a little bit like Dragon's Den Apprentice style. So I was totally overwhelmed and intimidated, and I got it. So and I was really lucky because I got to work with people in training who gave me advice, knowledge, the ability to help people learn and grow. And I spent years out on the road, traveling hotel to hotel, delivering training sessions. And from then on in, I became the meeting guide writer. So then I became responsible for writing those sessions, which was great fun, because then when we were out and doing videos and all the rest of it, and exploring and expanding all the time. So that's where it started, and this is where it is now.
Oh, that's fantastic. I always love listening to people's journeys into L&D, because I don't know about you, but within my network, I think majority of people I know in learning and development kind of fell into learning, or it was kind of an accident, or someone suggested it to them and they went, oh, okay, that sounds all right, I'll give it a go. It's funny, isn't it? Because it's not sort of something that I think is, well, I suppose it's not something that's talked about at school in terms of, a career that you can go into. I mean, sometimes you hear about HR, but even that, not that often.
No.
But I think you sort of, I don't know, I think it is, people are passionate about it and they find their way to it somehow.
They really do. And interestingly, because later, somewhere along the line, I became a qualified riding instructor as well. So actually a lot of the skills that we use in training in L&D fall into that as well. So along the way, you're sort of pulling together some of those transferable skills that eventually, like you say, you end up here. And once you get here and you realize the difference it can make to people, I think then it doesn't let go of you.
You definitely need to care about the impact on people and wanting to help people and make a change, don't you, in our industry?
Definitely. Definitely, that's what it's all about. At the very heart of it is about helping people grow, change.
Your experience, your passion, all of that aside, there must be stuff that annoys you about our industry. You and I have had the occasional rant in the past from memory.
You and I rant?
No, can you imagine? What is your particular area of frustration with our industry at the moment, Sarah?
Well, we've definitely ranted about this in the past, and I think it's probably where our paths first crossed, actually, Kathy, because what really bothers me, what really bothers me is the notion that all of us, so the L&Ders, that there is a misconception that everyone will love learning as much as us. Okay, now we're passionate about it. We are like sponges. You can see that through the conversations we have when we go to events, and how deep we get into these conversations and how much we lap it up. But not everyone's like that. And the frustration for me is that we can have amazing platforms, we can have amazing content, we can have amazing methodologies, all sorts of things that are happening. But the bottom line for me here is if we don't help the people understand why they want it or need it, why it's going to help them, then we can have all the fancy stuff in the world. But if they don't want to engage and come on board and want to learn, then it's all, what's it all been for? And so the first point for me, I mean, I'm not a marketeer by any length of the imagination, but I think what I do understand is people. And I suppose it started with all those lines of people that wanted to lose weight. and not everyone wanted to lose weight. Okay, people would be sent from the doctors and told that they had to lose weight, and it's the same thing. If they don't want to do it, you can take a horse to water, can't make it drink. So the first point for me is, you know, are we understanding what our learners, our people want, the individuals? Because for every learner, I don't even know whether I like the word learner now. I've just said it like that, Kathy, to be honest. That could be my next rant. For every person that comes along, they are a person with a history and experiences and likes and dislikes. And, you know, what if they don't give a toot about what we're coming at them with? You know, so I think about when I went to Ann Summers, and you know, we were working with thousands of self-employed party ambassadors. You know, they weren't employed. We couldn't make them do anything, nothing at all. So you had to work on the basis of what's going to make them sit up, what's going to spark their interest, what's going to trigger their motivation enough to think, oh, I'm going to look into this a little bit more, or oh, that's interesting. And the interesting thing is that as L&D practitioners, we know in our own learning methodologies how we have to create that impact. But are we always using it at the outset to really draw people in to their own development? Because it is their own development, and it might be for organizations. We work with big organizations, you know, and we will talk about, you know, that it's about their performance, but ultimately at the heart of it is a person. So we have to go into that first, because once we get that bit right, and the marketing of it, and the why are you doing this, why is it important to you, what do you already know, what can we layer on top of this that triggers and sparks your imagination, that makes you believe that you can do this and believe that it's going to make a difference to you. When we've done that for an individual, then the rest follows. It's a bit like looking after the pennies and the pounds, because then we start to gain performance. But it's the individual and the groups of individuals, and pinpointing and targeting what they need and why they need it and what matters to them. That's the bit that's going to start that kind of triggering of events. In my opinion, you have to find out what matters to them. What do they care about?
You're absolutely right. I mean, this is something, oh God, I'm massively passionate about this. I really am. I mean, the amount of people, and you've probably had this in your part, I'm sure everyone in L&D has had this at some point, if you've been involved in a kind of facilitation side of L&D, you know, you've always run a session where there have been people that rock up and you sort of ask people, you know, why are you here? What do you want to learn today? What's your purpose? And you just wait, and you know you're going to have one or two people that go, I don't know, I was sent. And
I was sent. My manager made me.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I'm a grown-up adult and I was made to come.
Exactly. And I love your Weight Watchers analogy. That's really interesting. I hadn't thought about that. I suppose, yeah, there would be people that would be going that actually didn't want to go, but we're kind of going under duress. So that's an interesting experience you've got there. I mean, I think the why thing is kind of layered in itself, because we often talk to learning and development about making sure that they're selling the why for a program to the business to get investment, to get sign off, maybe to get additional resources. So maybe we focus on that why we need to do it for the business, but that business why is probably completely irrelevant for the individual. It might even be irrelevant for their line manager, because I think there's a why for the line manager, so that they're supportive and they want to send their people, or, you know, make sure that they go and support them in their learning journey. And then, as you've said, absolutely, we need the why for the individual. You kind of can't blanket cover that for individuals, because you need to be able to know a little bit about them. You need to tap into what's going to motivate them. You know, what motivates me to learn is probably going to be what very different to what motivates you potentially. But I think this is a massive area, and even, you know, even to the point of, well, what's the credibility of the learning and development function like in the organization? How's L&D seen? You know, Jeff Bezos has that famous quote, your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. Well, what the hell's your company saying about the L&D team? You know, is learning thought of as a positive or not, or maybe a time wasting?
Yeah.
It's it's a massive topic.
And it depends, doesn't it, on how we're positioning that right at the outset. It depends on what work we're doing before we even get to thinking what solutions are needed. Is it even an L&D solution that's needed? You know, so sort of looking at that top level sort of stakeholder engagement where we're talking about numbers and all the rest of it, but actually then drilling it down is if we're going to move that needle on some of the things that are needed in that C-suite, what actually is happening for those individuals, and how do we tap into what they care about in order to turn that round and make that happen for them? So, you know, because it's not always about the outcome or what they are set to gain. Sometimes it's about what they're set to lose. You know, over my career, people have, you know, there's been a lot in the sales environment. So in and Summers, that was obviously about sales. But then, you know, I've spoken to other and worked with other companies where it's about delivery drivers, and they're saying, but they don't want to come on training courses. And well, no, probably not. They want to, what do they want? And how are you finding out what they care about? So is it that they just want an early finish and to get through it as quickly as possible? In that case, is it a case of making their job easier and cutting out some of the red tape? So it's not just there's a training need, they need to be nicer to people when they're, you know, putting a parcel at someone's door or delivering a piece of furniture. It's what does that individual want to get out of their job on any given day? And are there some common themes here? So if you start to drill down into those individuals, what are the themes? What are their blockers?
And have you done that? I mean, in your career, have you got examples at all of where, you know, you've done something, or you've carried out an activity or whatever to really find out what the kind of individual why is? And is there any advice you can share there?
Yeah, and it's about scalability here, isn't there? So it depends on the groups of people, the size of the groups, the geography of the groups. You know, if you can get and speak to people. So we've done loads of focus group work, pulled people together, or sort of created a bit of a where people might go and talk to people. So we'd say, right, okay, you're going to have ambassadors in certain areas. You go and tell us what the problems are from your area and bring it back to us. And then look at the commonalities that sit amongst those groups of people. I mean, obviously you've got other things that you can do in terms of surveys and collecting that data, looking at what data you've currently got in your systems. You know, with a lot of the learning platforms, you've got some rich data that's sitting there in the background. Are you utilizing it? Are you figuring out where people are and aren't going? And then maybe, you know, doing some random, picking up the phone and speaking to people and saying, okay, so I noticed this happened. Tell me a bit more about that, to start to get a little bit more of a flavor at the human, because you've got the data side of it, which is going to tell you a certain story, but then also remembering that there's humans there as well. So still reaching out and getting some, you know, some nice stories and reasons, and really getting what's sitting behind these individuals. And an example yesterday was like, somebody phoned me yesterday wanting some data off me, and I said it was nothing to do with well, actually it was to do with learning and development, but it was for my son. So it was for my son, and it was the college ringing to get some stats. And I said, well, what's this for? And they said, well, it's for the government. This is how the government measure us. I said, well, okay, so hang on a minute there. I said, because this data does not tell the story. Because the story is that he's been diagnosed autistic, and actually the questions that were asked were things like, has the course managed to give him a job from that? I said, no, because there's other stuff going on. So it's about getting the, you know, the qualitative stuff as well as the quantitative stuff to make sure that you've got the right story. Otherwise it can really get skewed, and then we're not targeting the right things.
And also, I think that, you know, if you, by doing that and by making contact with people where you can, and I appreciate that, you know, the scale thing is clearly an issue, especially for massive organizations, but where you can make contact with people, I think the more touch points you have with people, the better the state the individual is going to be in before learning, you know, because you're sort of taking away any kind of fear of unknown as well about attending learning. You're starting, I think, to, because of those interactions, they're starting to almost look forward to an event that's happening. So I think that's kind of got kind of two benefits to it, really. But I like that, the random calls, focus groups, great idea. Always good to do that.
It's interesting what you just said about fear, because I think in workforces there can be a lot of fear. I can remember years and years ago being sent it was supposed to be an anonymous questionnaire, but actually the reality is that people were scared. And so we were scared that if we answered it honestly, would there be repercussions? So I think there's a lot in this as well about having that trust at the outset. So I'm asking these questions because that relationship building, and this is another example, isn't it, of where the data can sometimes be skewed. Or, you know, are people telling the truth, or are they saying what they think the company needs to hear? We're in a time where, you know, jobs really matter. Putting food on the table really does matter. You know, today I've sat with a hot water bottle because I'm not putting the heating on. So there is that fear element, and if there's that fear element, that will have an impact on their learning.
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, I'm actually starting, I mean, I haven't told anybody this, just keep it between us.
But you know that we're on a podcast, don't you?
Yeah. Oh, no one will remember this bit. But I'm starting knitting classes actually this evening. I just wanted to do something a bit creative. I sort of miss that element actually often, and so yeah, I'm starting knitting, and I was quite apprehensive, I must admit, because I was thinking, well, I don't know how many people are going to be in the group. I feel like I'm going to need a lot of one-to-one. I'm a real beginner here. I've done some self-teaching through YouTube, but it really is, you know, no good. The reason I've enrolled is because I actually want some guidance and some help. And I've actually had 3 emails since I registered, which is about a month ago, from the tutor, which have been lovely. One just introducing herself, giving me her background, telling me a bit more about the session. One letting me know sort of roughly what the group size is, and the kind of experience levels in it. And then one the other day asking me if I had any personal objectives for the 5-week course, because she can, you know, help me with that. And did I want to focus more on knitting or on crochet, and what did I want to achieve at the end of it? And now I am just so excited and I can't wait. I mean, I know I've opted into this anyway, but there's still that level of, like you were just discussing, that a kind of fear or unknown. And actually, the more touch points there are, the more I'm kind of beginning to look forward to it.
Yeah, and this then comes back to all in the same theme, but you know, we've got to understand who our people are and why, and I want to ask you now a bit more about your knitting, because I'm generally just very nosy, but also that communication piece. You know, how are we perceived? How good is our communication? Because we can get that so right or so wrong, and in this case it's been done right, because it's taken you from not knowing what on earth is going to happen to thinking, oh, okay, I know what's going to happen, and having some confidence in what happens next. And I said at the weekend to my daughter, who's worried about, she's always worried about something, bless her, but she's working really hard on it, and she is worried about a new horse event that she's going to. And I said, this is simply fear of the unknown. So because you've not been here before. I said, and do you know what, that's completely normal. And she was like, oh yeah, it is. So I said, it's completely normal to feel that anxiety. I said, I feel it if I go somewhere new. I'm a country bumpkin. I'm from the Isle of Man. When I go into London or any city, to be honest, I'm the person that's turning round in a little circle going, where the hell am I? And I'm going to be late. And I know that I'm going to be that person because I've not been to that particular place before. So it's that fear of the unknown, that what if I look stupid. And it doesn't matter the level of the person that you're working with, the level of the learner. We're all human beings, and that fear of the unknown is there for many people. I'm not going to say everyone, because perhaps not everyone is, but certainly for me, and you know, I've been on this planet a little while now, and I still feel that fear. What you're saying is, you know, for something personal that you want to go in and do, nobody sent you, there's no expectation out of the back of it, there's no exam, there's no salary dependent on it, but even then you're feeling a bit anxious about it. You're thinking, what's going to happen?
Yeah, absolutely. And it didn't really take much for the tutor for this course to kind of put my mind at ease, to be honest. And I think maybe it's something that we probably forget about a bit in learning and development, particularly when we're scheduling things en masse. There's the you know, as you what started all this, you know, you sort of saying that we're not focusing on the kind of what's in it for me, the why are you doing this, but then also it's kind of making them feel safe, getting them to look forward to it, making sure they're in the right state for learning. It's all kind of wrapped up together, isn't it?
And it's about putting yourself in another person's shoes. How's that going to feel? And that goes across all those conversations. So we talked about how in L&D we will position it for stakeholders, and we'll be thinking about, you know, the numbers. It's about thinking, what do they care about? If I was in their shoes, what am I thinking about right now? What do I need to get out of this? And it's exactly the same for our learners. If I've just been put on this course, or even if I've requested that I want this, we work with a lot of on a lot of leadership courses where people have wanted this, have aspired to come on these sessions. They're nervous. They've not met me before. They've not met the other members of the cohort, you know, with huge job titles, people speaking in different languages. Put yourself in the other person's shoes and think, right, what could possibly be going on for them right now? And so we can have lots of conversations with focus groups and really find out. But if we just stop for a second and think, what if I was that person, what would I need? You're starting to get there, aren't you?
You've given some great advice there, actually. I think putting yourself in other people's shoes, absolutely. I think we all know that. We all know that that's a good thing to do. Remembering and taking the time out to actually do it is another thing. Focusing on the why and the what's in it for me. Also, your advice around how can you find out what people want and what people need, what motivates people through kind of focus groups, calling people, reviewing existing data that you might have in the organization. Is there anything else? I mean, in terms of kind of advice for any learning and development professionals listening, any additional advice or kind of next steps you'd recommend for people?
So look up and listen. Okay, so I think we can get so lost in what we're doing, so driven in the direction in what we're doing, is just sort of taking that temperature check of what's going on around us. Taking the time at the outset of any project that you're undertaking to think about the needs of the business, the needs of the individuals, you know, really looking at sort of decision pathways and thinking about, you know, is it a need for a learning solution here? Is this L&D? Is it that we can just make their job a little bit easier? Is it, you know, so really use the people around you and talk to other people in the organization, because we can sometimes get stuck in our own little world. Okay, and are we talking to enough people around the organization? What would marketing say? What would finance say? Really looking at the organization from all of those different personalities, finding out what the blockers are. If there was one thing that they could change, keep it really simple. It doesn't need to be laborious. The more labor inducing anything is, the more likely it is that we're not going to do it. You know, I saw an email come out yesterday, actually, and obviously we're always looking for data, aren't we? We're always looking for that data that comes back and tells us a story. And just at the bottom of the email, they'd put you know, how was it today? And it's a little bit like those ones you get in the co-op. Other supermarkets are available. I don't know if they do, but certainly in my co-op there is. There's just a smiley face.
Yes.
It was at the bottom of an email, and I was like, that is so quick. Because I could do that, and it didn't take me any more time in my busy day to go, yeah, it was all right. Simple, just keeping it
Mhm.
really simple. Don't make it complicated, and just think about people, the individuals.
That's great advice. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast, Sarah. I've loved chatting to you as always.
Oh, I've loved chatting to you. And how therapeutic is it to just be able to have a little rant? Can we do this every week, Kathy?
Absolutely.